Did you know that getting this one detail wrong can literally cost you thousands upon thousands of dollars in fines? It's going to be the care label. Where should you place the care label for optimal comfort and readability? And ultimately, depending on which country you're in, what rules and regulations that you need to follow so that you can be compliant today. Without further ado, let's get right into the episode. First, we must understand what is the core purpose of a care label. You might just be relying on the manufacturer to create it for you, but there's 3 missed opportunities and 3 things that you're responsible for. Number 1 is legal compliance. Countries will require specific information to be put on the care label. Number 2 is customer trust. What you say on the care label is going to help you build trust with your customers because you're communicating with them. The size of the garment, the composition of the garment, whether it's sustainable, whether it's made out of specific fibers that your customer might be allergic to. And then lastly, it helps you to build brand. So let's distinguish with what different types of labels are typically associated with a garment. You have 4 core different types of labels, and we're going to be focusing on one, but what you have to understand is you have what is known as your main label or your brand labels. These can be things like the logo mark that are printed on the inside of the neckline. Maybe they're printed outside of the garment. Number 2 is going to be your care labels. These are absolutely mandatory. Whereas with your brand labels, they're there and they can be put in a variety of different ways, and they're there to add brand and to add identity to the garment. With a care label, they are mandatory and there's important information that needs to be included, adding the composition of the garment, the size of the garment, the brand name, and at the very minimum, the care labels or the care instructions, how to care for the garment, and the care label icons, which are universal. If you're starting off, most likely your care label may not include the size on the garment itself or on the label itself. So what you're going to have separately is you're going to have the care label and you're going to have a size label on top of it as an added. This helps you to reduce the minimum order quantity by only creating one design of care label and then adding the size in the top left corner of that care label. Lastly, you're going to have a hang tag, and hang tags are typically removable and are not required by law. They sometimes have a little bit of the story of the brand, and sometimes they can even have the SKU, which is an individual code that identifies each garment and each design and each style that helps you as a brand to keep track of your inventory. And it might have some details of the product, maybe the pricing of the product, the MSRP, so on and so forth. So now let's talk about technical compliance. If you're importing into the US, what do you need to show? Well, you need to follow FTC guidelines, and what FTC guidelines specify is that you should have the accurate fiber composition, starting off with the largest composition first and then the smallest. We have the main body fabric on the front, and then we have the mesh fabric on the back. I do need to specify both of the compositions. I have to specify 8% nylon, 12% spandex. This is the main body fabric. And then for the mesh fabric, it's going to be 88 or 85% polyester, 15% spandex. And then that's the mesh part of the fabric. Next, when it comes to the US, you'll want to include care instructions or care icons. And there are universal icons. The ones that we typically use in the United States are what is known as the ASTM D5489 standard that signify things like wash cold or wash hot or wash at 30 degrees. If you want me to do a video where I go through each and every single care label icon and I run you through what they mean, let me know in the comments below and I may consider that. Last 2 things for the US is going to be the country of origin and, if necessary, especially on larger companies, the manufacturer identification number. If you're mainly importing or transacting in the EU, when it comes to most of the information, it's very similar to the United States. What the EU uses instead are going to be the ISO 3578 care label symbols. You want to make sure that you're following the EU textile regulations in terms of how you're specifying the fabrics and the fibers and what you're importing and what you're being able to bring into the zones, which are going to be the 1007, so 1007/2011, which specifies you have to have clear fiber composition in order from largest to least large, and specifically the languages of every single country. So if you're importing into Germany, you have to have English and you have to have German. And most likely with a lot of EU countries, they have all of the languages that are spoken in the EU. That's why you tend to see EU care labels be multiple pages. It can sometimes have up to 20 different countries if you're a brand like Nike and you know that you are regularly importing and retailing in those countries. So when it comes to the different types of materials that you can use on your care label, we all know and we've picked up a t-shirt where the care label is just so itchy. It's so uncomfortable and it completely ruins the experience. Versus getting a high quality woven fabric or a fiber that just feels very silky smooth to the touch, and the information is woven in such a high quality way. That makes or breaks the difference. We'll start off with your woven polyester labels, which can either have a woven branding application, which we call a damask weave, where the actual branding is woven into the actual garment or the actual tag itself. The advantages here is that it's much less likely to wear away over time versus a screen printed type of application, and it just has a much more premium feel, especially if the density of the weave, the intensity and the resolution of the weave is very high quality. Typically, these are going to be made out of polyester. The second type is going to be your satin weave, which can either be polyester or nylon. Typically with satin woven labels, they just have a more shiny and lustrous look to them, and they tend to be softer on the skin. Next, we have what is known as our TPU labels. These are great. They are typically thermoplastic sort of fibers, and they tend to have a very rubbery premium feel. And then lastly, you're going to have what is known as your tear away label or your Cinceline label. You tend to see this on garments where, again, you need to have a lot of comfort when you're wearing it, and in most cases it could be things like undergarments where you want to be able to know what the composition is the first time, but then tear away the care label so you don't have that annoying feeling of something itching you in the back. Now let's talk about where you should place your care label on your garment. Well, number one is you always understand your care label should never be visible from the outside. Typically on a t-shirt, you have two core places that you should consider adding a care label, either on the center neckline or on the hip, around 4 to 5 inches above the hemline. Typically it's on the left hip. If you have something like a sports bra, it might be on the left hip, or it might be on the center neckline as well. One note is always to make sure that the care label is easily accessible. In this case, let's just say you had to place it in a weird place. Make sure that it's not so far in on the inseam where it's very difficult for you to actually read it. Well guys, that is it. That is a wrap on this episode. Let me know what you think. Have you ever had issues creating and composing your own care labels? Check out many of the other episodes that we've done in the past when it comes to labels and all sorts of packaging assets you should be including as part of your initial collection. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please consider smashing a massive thumbs up. And if you want my personal advice, maybe you've already tried to design your own care label, but you want a second opinion, you can check the link in the description, and I offer one-on-one consultation calls every single week. Slots are limited, but I'd be more than happy to hop on that call with you guys. I say this from the very bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fit Design TV. Until next week's episode, stay awesome.